You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm your host, Robert Lanning. Joining us on Locked On Texans is the very first voice for the Houston Texans. No, not Mark Vandermeer. I'm referring to the original Houston Texans from the World Football League back in 1974. Some of you might remember Jerry Trupiano from his days as the voice of the Houston Oilers all through the 80s, but Jerry was also the first voice of the Texans on radio. And thanks for joining me, Jerry. Has it been a while since you were asked about those Texans?
Yeah, it has been a while, and we did not only radio, we did simulcast on TV. It was quite the operation, even to the point for the pictures of the media guide. The coaches had a Texans shirt, sort of a golf shirt. And for those of us on staff, there was one shirt we had to pass around for each guy to get his picture taken. So it was a streamlined operation.
Yeah, there's some great stories with this, and I want to get to that in a second. But remind everybody, if you would, what exactly the World Football League was.
It was the offshoot of an idea that Gary Davidson and Dennis Murphy, the guys who started the ABA and the WHA, they decided to get into pro football, and they were going to play in the summer, and they did play in the Astrodome. We saw the Texans last only half a season, a 16-game season. I think there was only 8 games played before they became the Shreveport Steamer, and there are stories related to that move as well. Yeah, it was a brief. It was a brief partnership, but a memorable one.
Yeah, I want to get to the Steamers because you're right. There's some good stories there. But on April 10th, 1974, Texans owner Stephen Arnold offered legendary Chiefs coach and the Super Bowl IV champion Hank Stram $2 million to jump to the Texans and coach in the WFL. This was a big move back then, Jerry.
See, that's a story. I never heard that story. Being associated with the team, I never heard that story. That's news to me. Of course, I got to know Hank Stram later on through Jack Buck because they were on the Monday Night Football crew on CBS Radio. But I did not know that. You broke news for me today.
I'm hoping this is right. I'm getting off of this off of a website talking about the WFL. Who were some of the named players on the Houston Texans? The first one I'll throw at you to begin with was a legendary wide receiver, Don Maynard, right?
Yeah, they talked to Maynard. I don't think he ever. I can't. Pardon my failing memory, but I can't even remember him showing up. The name that jumps out at me was John Matuszak, the late John Matuszak, who played for the Oakland Raiders, was a member of the Oilers. I think they traded him, but he broke his Oilers contract. He wanted to renegotiate his Oilers contract. Said he's a free agent. Signed with the Texans. He played 3 downs in the Astrodome, and about 20 sheriff deputies came with a process server, and on the sideline during the course of the game after he played his 3 downs, they served him with a restraining order. And then there was a trial that we attended every day where Sid Gilman, the coach of the Oilers at the time, and the whole team were subpoenaed to appear. And Matuszak never played another down in the World Football League. And another memory of him was he and his bodybuilder agent, and I forget the guy's name. We had a trip to Hawaii to play the Hawaiians. I believe that was their name. And Matuszak showed up on the beach in the skimpiest man's swimsuit one could ever imagine. And the young ladies that were following him and his bodybuilder agent walking down the beach was something to behold.
The one story I guess I heard was when he was pulled off the field, it was right after he sacked the quarterback, Tom Sherman. And then so that he was given the restraining order and he waved the document in front of the home crowd to see. Does that story ring a bell at all?
Yeah, that's I think he did play to the crowd, but that was the last time he played for the Texans. And then at the trial, some of the mutterings that Sid Gilman, a crusty old football guy, had for Matuszak's attorney was something to see. And Matuszak's attorney told me after I saw him at a break or something. He said they have no chance to win. But yeah, and I think he was returned to the Oilers. I don't remember if he ever played for them. I think he was then traded to the Oakland Raiders, and of course he had his off-field problems that cost him his life years ago.
Yeah, he won a couple of Super Bowls with the Raiders and just one of the real legendary characters in the NFL. A few of the other names that I read, and see if any of these ring a bell, that played for the Texans, quarterback Don Trull, ex-Jet quarterback Mike Taliaferro.
Mike Tolliver, yeah.
Oiler Sidney Blanks, former UH star Paul Gibson, and wide receiver Willie Wells.
Yep. Garland Boyette, who played for the Oilers, came out of retirement and played for them. Jim Nantz, not our friend and broadcaster, but the running back, Jim Nantz, right. Nance, played for them as well. It was and Don Brum and Joe Robb, two former defensive linemen for the St. Louis Football Cardinals. They played for them as well. Yeah. As a matter of fact, Joe Robb appeared on our talk show the day that President Nixon resigned. I think we had to end that show early because of the breaking news of the president resigning after the Watergate scandal.
Yeah, that was a memorable day for my mom, because that was also the day that my sister was born. That was August 9th, 1974.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were a lot of ex-NFL players playing in the World Football League, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I couldn't name them off the top of my head right now. One story that jumps out, though, you mentioned Don Maynard, a wide receiver. The one wide receiver I really remember was a guy named Ricky Eber, and he was memorable because of a game. I want to say it was in Tulsa. Don't hold me to that, but it was a rainy night. It might have been in Memphis. I'm taking it back. I think it was in Memphis. It was a rainy night. He got knocked out of bounds after catching a pass, and all of a sudden, as he's knocked out of bounds, the defensive back is trying to help him up. As sometimes you'll see they'll put a hand out and help pull the guy up after he fell down, and then all of a sudden you see the defensive back shaking his hand in pain. Well, what happened was Ricky Eber had sawed off thumbtacks taped to his fingers to catch the ball on a rainy night, and he was ejected. He was ejected from the game.
Yeah, that's a new one. I don't know if I've heard that before.
I haven't. I didn't hear of it before, and I haven't heard of it since. But the shaved down thumbtack trick, I've heard of a lot of stick 'em and what have you wide receivers use, but not thumbtacks.
The rules, Jerry, a little different. From what I understand, only 1 foot needed to be in bounds for a catch, just like in college. There were no fair catches on punts, which for those of you that saw that USFL 30 for 30 documentary on ESPN, they mentioned that was a USFL rule as well. Kickoffs were from the 30 because they wanted more run backs, which the NFL later adopted for a while. And the backs could go in motion towards the line of scrimmage before snaps. What other rules do you remember from that league?
The one thing that I could never figure out, they didn't use chains as they do in the NFL and in college football. They had an instrument called the dicker rod. And don't ask me to explain it, but supposedly this was going to measure for first downs and be much more accurate than the chains. You mentioned the kick returns. They played a game in New York in a stadium on Rikers Island where the prison is. I swear to goodness, one punt returner had stolen hubcaps under his arms after returning a punt. We didn't know if we were going to get out of there that night. It was a tough neighborhood.
And then also, was it touchdowns were worth 7 points instead of 6 points, and then they had the 2-point conversion like in college, right?
I have to confess, there's a lot of the World Football League that's out of my memory. I remember some of the things and some of the people, like my broadcast partner Bob Talamini, the former Oiler and New York Jet offensive lineman who became, I believe, an investment banker, a stockbroker, was very successful in that career. But after every game of the 8 we did in the World Football League, he would write a letter to ABC, I'm ready for Monday Night Football, or CBS. And the last trip we made, after it was determined the Houston Texans were going to become the Shreveport Steamers, he was so distraught that his broadcast career was coming to an end. Oh, that trip from we played at Legion Field in Birmingham, Alabama. We made the trip over to Birmingham, and we had to room together. And I'm unlocking the door to the hotel, and Bob was so upset he fired his suitcase into the hotel room and just missed my head. And then we show up for the game that night, the final game, and we hopefully we were very professional, but he was so distraught. Up on the scoreboard they had Birmingham, and then for the visiting team, the soon to be ex Houston Texans and future Shreveport Steamers. We didn't know they were the Steamers becoming the Steamers, and we knew they were going to Shreveport, but up on the scoreboard they had Louisiana. So Bob was so distraught. We did our pregame prep, and normally our pregame prep, you stay up in the booth the whole time, but he was so distraught. We went down on the field and we walked the circumference of Legion Field. We did that a couple of times, and finally we get upstairs to start the broadcast. And when you're on the road, in our NFL days, we had our same spotter with us all the time. It was Greg Stengel, who worked in the Oilers PR department, and we would hire a statistician on the road. Well, with the Texans, we had to hire both a statistician on the road and a spotter. Well, we get up to the broadcast booth, and the gentleman who was going to be our spotter, I'm gonna try to be kind. I'm thinking maybe he was in his late 70s. And his glasses looked like the bottoms of Coke bottles. They were so thick. And this was going to be our spotter. Talamini and I started laughing. And our producer, Bob Boyne, who was a director and a producer for the the Colt 45s when they first got to come into being in Houston and later became the Astros. He says, "Okay, guys, we're 2 minutes away from the broadcast," and he would count us down. And I had read the open for the previous 8 weeks, and the open was live from such and such. The Houston Texans are on the air. Well, I'm looking at Talamini, and he's laughing, and I'm laughing. Bob Boyne hands me the card to read, and I go, "Live from Legion Field in Birmingham, Alabama." I got the hue out. And we started laughing, and we couldn't stop laughing for 2 minutes. They had to throw it to commercial, and we finally got it together after the commercial break.
Well, how many fans were coming out to those games? And I'm wondering if you remember something called Nickel Beer Night.
Oh, I've been involved in Nickel Beer Night. I don't remember it in the World Football League. I remember it in hockey. No, I don't remember that one. But let's say the fan support was underwhelming.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have saved time by introducing the crowds to the starting lineups.
and from what I understand, they were in such financial problems that a Houston bus driver refused to drive the team to Rice University for practice, claiming that the bus company hadn't been paid in weeks, so the team had to cancel practice.
Yeah, that's no surprise. The head coach was Jim Garrett, Jason Garrett's. The current coach of the Dallas Cowboys, his father.
Right. Okay.
And we got a little crossways in Hawaii because he would come on after every game. And this just goes to show you that people think they hear what is actually said. So we're in Hawaii. They lose the game. We try to get him on the air. We have technical difficulties. It does not. The interview does not come about. And I said, we have technical difficulties. We apologize for that. We won't be able to talk with Coach Jim Garrett. So his wife calls him that night and says that I say on the air that since they lost, he refused to come on the air. So he confronts me before we fly back to Houston. And I said, "Coach, that's not what I said. I said, I will get you the tape." And I got him the tape and proved it. And, that was that. But just another day in the brief life of the World Football League, Houston Texans.
Yeah, I guess so. Several small businesses were calling their offices about unpaid bills. They moved the team to Louisiana. I don't know if they moved the team because they thought it was a better deal, or they were just running from people asking for money. They played a total of 11 games, Jerry, I think it was, from what I read, and then they become the Shreveport Steamers. So before they got their new name, they played a game, and people jokingly referred to them as the Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah, we that's what we started calling them. That our last game in Birmingham, because as I said, it just set up on the scoreboard Louisiana. So Talamini and I said we might as well call them the Louisiana Purchase. We don't know where they're going in Louisiana or what the name is going to be. But those were some interesting days. Oh, another one. What was Terry Cole won Super Bowls with the Colts and the Dolphins. And back in those days, the Super Bowl rings were so small, he wore them both on one finger. So we're flying to Hawaii, and I took my wife Donna with me on that trip, and she was expecting our first child. So we have the meals on the plane, and it was a commercial flight. I was eating a steak, and Donna had a steak, and she says, I'm feeling kind of sick. I don't want to eat this. She asked me if I wanted it, and I said no. And Terry Cole hears that, and he says, "You're not going to eat that?" And she says, "No." He reaches over and consumed her steak in about 2 bites.
And let me ask you this question, because this was a crazy trivia question for you. Do you remember who replaced you as the voice of the team when they moved to Louisiana?
No. What poor soul was that?
It was this guy named Larry King.
Who's that?
Larry King, the CNN CNN legend. Larry King would replace you, according to what I read, anyway.
I'm not sure that's true. Larry King got mad at me one time because I got back to him. I said on the air, he's got nice suspenders, but why doesn't he wear a sport coat? I seem to get into trouble wherever I go. Now I'm not sure if that's because Larry King was stationed in Miami, and I don't think that's true because he was stationed in Miami doing a talk show down there for the Mutual Broadcasting System, and I had heard stories about some of the dealings with Mutual because I worked for them as well. So I don't think that trivia question is true. It sounds good, but I don't think it's true.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just ignore everything that you find out on the internet because that's what happens. But
sometimes on the interweb, what you read is not necessarily true, huh?
Yeah, I was getting some of these details from a site that had some Texans history. Was anything else that comes to mind from those days? Anything else that you can remember?
Oh, just that it was interesting. It was fun proving that you could do football. Working with a guy like the late Bob Boyne was terrific. We felt so bad for him because Bob Talamini and I had fallback jobs that we were going to do, and poor Bob Boyne had retired from being with the Houston Sports Association. Things weren't going to be there for him after the Texans moved, so we took him out to dinner in Birmingham the night before, and Talamini and I stayed up all night just talking, and I was trying to calm him down. And Bob Talamini had a brief career as a professional wrestler too. So him being in a bad mood, I had to make sure that I got him calmed down. He's a great guy, but he was upset that their broadcasting career was coming to an end.
Well, let me ask you this: when you find out the name was going to be the Houston Texans for the NFL team, were you at all concerned that there were some issues with that name?
It reminded me of the World Football League days, but no, I'm sure that Mr. McNair and everybody had everything checked before they brought that one out of mothballs.
Hey, well, thanks for sharing all those memories. Before I let you go, I know you've been doing some World Baseball. You did some World Baseball Classic games. What was that experience like for you?
Terrific. It was terrific. It was very good baseball. It was meaningful baseball in the month of March. It was fun to get back behind the microphone and watch things. I'm thrilled I had a chance to call a Giancarlo Stanton home run because that thing was out in the blink of an eye. Adam Jones, the Baltimore center fielder, big hits for Team USA, a home run robbing catch. Manny Machado. Manny Machado's play at third base for the Dominican team was worth the price of admission on its own. Watching Yadier Molina from the Puerto Rican team handle a pitching staff, watching him for several games instead of just watching him every once in a while was a treat. I thought the Dominican Republic was going to win it when they got knocked off by Puerto Rico and didn't qualify for the trip to Los Angeles. I thought Puerto Rico was going to win it. Pleasantly surprised that Jim Leland's team, USA, won it all. And it's going to be interesting to see moving forward if the success of Team USA will garner more interest here in the United States, because while the team was excited with their wins and got several big crowds, the general enthusiasm around the country was not there. Like when we got to San Diego, the thing had been publicized, but there were still people I ran into who didn't realize the World Baseball Classic, that second round, was going on in San Diego. But the Dominican crowds that we saw, the crowds with Puerto Rico, just the emotion of Venezuela, the emotion from those lands outside the U.S. Really gave it a lot of spirit. And I don't know if that will ever be captured here in the United States because we have Major League Baseball. But to get more excitement, to get more fan reaction, as we saw from those other locales, I hope it happens, because it was a terrific event.
Yeah, and by pure coincidence, my guest over on my Houston Sports Talk podcast was somebody that you got to broadcast the games with, and somebody with great Houston connection here, Allison Footer, right?
Right. She worked the Miami portion with us, along with former Major League infielder Marlon Anderson. And then when we got to San Diego, Allison stayed back in Florida, and we had Jesse Sanchez from MLB.com. I hope Allison said nice things about me.
Oh, yeah.
That's always an iffy proposition. No, she did a terrific job. She knows the sport and knows her stuff, and it was fun working with her and Marlon Anderson and Jesse Sanchez.
Yeah, we love Allison. Well, hey, Jerry, thanks so much for doing this and trying to remember those times. I guess it's been 43 years ago now.
Oh, my, yeah. It's been a while. Some of those memories we want to put out, but the remembering Talamini and Boyne and Ricky Eber with his thumbtacks and a couple of other things we have in our memory bank. Yeah, it's been fun to reminisce about that.
Well, before I close things out, a couple of quick reminders about this edition. And if your company would like to sponsor Locked On Texans, by the way, please let us know. We're looking for local sponsors. We're quickly gaining a large and passionate audience. Our rates are very reasonable and based solely on the number of listeners. So you get your value. Just drop me a line at lockedontexans@mail.com. We've had 50,000 listens so far. And for you diehard Astros and Rockets fans, make sure to check out my Houston Sports Talk podcast, where I hit on everything going on in Houston sports, including Cougars, Longhorns, Aggies, all of that stuff. It's all in the same places you'll find Locked On Texans: iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Locked On Texans is all part of the Locked On network of podcasts, with a show for every NFL and NBA team. Make sure to put Locked On Rockets with Ben Dubose in your podcast library if you haven't already. And if you've got something on your mind, just email me at lockedontexans@mail.com or send a message through our Locked On Texans Facebook and Twitter pages. Thanks so much for making Locked On Texans a part of your week.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.